Hey everyone, this is Jason Long with JH Media Group, and today we're going to be talking about the cost of building a SaaS system. So we've been doing this now for almost 20 years, and we've learned a few major things that go into building these SaaS systems that really affect cost. And today I want to share all of that with you. So the things we're going to be covering are going to be general aspects of SaaS, things that some people think about, some people don't think about, but you need to know when you're building a SaaS system. Contributing factors to cost. There's a few things that really make a huge difference in the cost of a system that I'd love to share with you. What people don't think about, the cost of developers all over the world, and which groups are stronger in what things, and example projects and their costs. So at the very end of this video, I'm actually going to share with you some of the projects we built and how much money those things cost. So let's get started. First off, web development is a lot like construction. There's a project plan, there's different kinds of specialists doing special kinds of things, and you got a project manager / contractor who's managing everything. The main difference is that there's no materials cost, or very little materials cost, because what you end up with is like software costs. But you don't have wood or bricks or whatever. What you have almost exclusively is human capital, the cost of people. So I'm going to break this down in hours for different areas, and then I'm going to tell you how much money those hours cost when we talk about the cost of developers and other team members. So, aspects of SaaS. The thing that people don't think about is that when you build a SaaS, you are building a business. You're not just building a software system. You're not going to build something that's just going to make money for you. That's not going to happen. You got to support it. You got to take care of your people. You got to have a community. You've got to have all sorts of things, and that takes money. So some of the things that you're going to need, some of the simple things you're going to need: a phone number. You're going to need a place to host your system, and that can get expensive depending upon the system. Things like insurance, tracking software, billing software, meeting software, project management software, CRM software, ongoing development work. So a lot of people I've talked to say, oh, well, I'll build the thing and then I'll be done. No, you won't. What happens if that server goes down? You got to have somebody that's either on call or that's constantly adding to the system. Almost definitely it's going to be constantly adding to the system. And then of course you've got your people, you've got people to answer the phone, you've got people doing things, whether it's contractors or VAs or people right in your location, you still have that aspect of things. So let's see. All right, the next thing is tool versus platform. And this comes down to the major cost things in a SaaS system. So people really build two kinds of SaaS systems: tools and platforms. A tool is something that you use. You can use it regularly, but it really does one or two basic things. A really good example of a tool is Buffer. Buffer or Hootsuite. Those are tools for posting to social media, posting whatever to social media. You might use it every day. It might be part of your main stack, but it really does one or two things, and that's it. Whereas a platform is going to be a much more full-featured thing. That's something like Asana or Facebook. Asana is a project management system. If you're not familiar with it, it's pretty thorough. It does calendaring, it does users, it does projects, tasks, dates, times, all sorts of stuff. When you look at the difference between something like Asana and something like something like Buffer, you can see there's a huge difference in these tools. So let's talk about the general build. Now let's get into the meat of what we're doing. So the build, like when you're building a system, the main things you've got are validation, which you've got to make sure you do this. This is the number one thing I see people not doing and really destroying their systems, destroying their ideas. You've got to validate your ideas. And a lot of times that involves the development team. What that means is that you're going to take some idea that you've got, you're going to have somebody build some general designs or general concepts around it and then go pitch that to different groups and try to pre-sell your idea or whatever. Just trying to make sure that users are going to buy the thing first. So let's say that you're going to end up with anywhere between 10 and 30 hours on that. It could go a lot higher. Big apps cost more money. But let's just start with that, 10 to 30 hours. Let's say as high as 50 hours. Just for the basic first step. A lot of times, by the way, you're going to keep on going with that. We've done projects where we've had hundreds of hours in validation. The next is planning. This is generally information architecture development. This is the place that is going to save you the most money. The projects that are well planned are smooth projects. So the more planning you do up front, the more you figure out every little bit of minutia up front, the less it's going to cost you in the long term. It's just like building a house. When you're working with a contractor, a good contractor is going to ask you everything about what color do you want the floors, what kind of knobs do you want on the counters or on the drawers, all sorts of things like that. That's the same kind of minutia you have to get into when you're doing this planning. So planning can take anywhere between, for a little tiny project that the company's done over and over again, maybe 10 hours. That's almost never going to happen. And that can be up to hundreds, or sometimes for big projects, even thousands of hours. We did one project one time where we had a 6-month planning time for I want to say a 3-man team for 6 months. So you're talking it can be a huge range for a tool. Let's say as little as reasonably as little as 30 hours, as much as 50, maybe 100 hours. All right, next is going to be UX design. So UX design can go hand in hand with those initial mock-ups and also with the planning. So you gotta spread this across. But let's say that this is after your planning is done, after your mock-ups, or after your concept ideas are done. Now you're gonna get into the nitty-gritty of those flows between the system. And also it's important to know, the more planning you do, the easier that UX design is. The more the designer knows what goes into the system, the easier it is for him to build all of those flows, him or her, to build all of those flows. So that's going to take you anywhere between 25 hours and hundreds of hours. Let's say in general, 25 hours to 75 hours. That's an okay estimate. It really is dependent on the size of the project. Next, you've got coding and development. This can range so much. If you're building like an AI tool with some advanced technology, you could be looking at thousands and thousands of hours. If you're building something like Buffer again, maybe not so much, maybe a few hundred hours. Really depends. That's why we're going to talk about examples in just a minute, because it really depends so much. Alright, so actually, with that being said, I'm going to go back to planning. When you do that planning side, the company doing this work for you, they should be able to give you some round number estimate when they do that planning. They should be able to give you an estimate up front, like a kind of a general idea estimate, and then by the time that planning is done, they should have a pretty solid idea about what the system is going to have. If they don't have a really good idea by the time that planning portion is done, you might want to look at doing business with somebody else. Okay. So next, a few aspects that people don't usually think about. You need to consider building in other systems. So for example, like an email drip system. When a user does X within the system, they need to get sent these emails. When they do Y within the system, they need to get sent those emails. You also have to build in what's called a transactional email system. You can have this be one and the same, but the transactional email system is way better in that it just not way better, it's kind of easier to work with. In that when you have something like a payment is made, it automatically sends an email that, hey, you made this payment to the client. A transaction sends the email, transactional email. So you have to consider that kind of thing as well. Next, you've got building tests. So one of the things that you can do to decrease your overall time the most is build tests into the system. The more well thought out systems with pre-built user bases that where you know going in you're going to have however many customers day one, you want to build those tests for that. If you're just building an MVP, you may not want to build tests right off. What a test is that it's an automated test that says, if I do this, the system should respond in this way. The reason this is valuable is that when your developer goes in to make changes, they need to know that if they make this change, the system is going to respond in that way for the old stuff. I know it sounds like kind of a silly thing to do, but it is a huge time saver. So much time can be saved in the long term by having those tests built as you go along. And that is going to run you anywhere between 10 and 20% of build. Next, you've got your alpha testing, which can run also 10 to 20% of build cost, and your beta testing, same thing, 10 to 20%. It can be a lot faster, so I've seen it at almost nothing, but it's good to build in those costs and those ideas. And then finally, of course, your release. When you do your release, you're going to have to take into consideration all your marketing, but we're not going to talk about all the marketing in this conversation. Next time we'll talk about that. Okay, so let's get in a little deeper into that build side of things. The aspects of the system you need to consider that almost all SaaS systems are user management. That means logging in, logging out, retrieving your password, resetting your password for a user to be able to go into their My Account area, change their username, or add other team members. And the adding other team members means you're going to have different permission systems. So if you've got team members for accounts, then you have to also build a permission system. The user management can run anywhere between 25 and 100 hours. Permission systems can run anywhere between 25 and counterpart as user management into the hundreds of hours, depending upon how complex the user permission systems are. Next, you've got additions and pricing. So additions and pricing are like, how much money do you pay for the basic plan, the pro plan, the advanced plan? The thing that everybody forgets is that this changes. You have to plan on the cost on you changing the cost. And when you change the cost, let's say you've got $30 a month for something. You want to decrease the cost for your basic plan, but increase the cost for your pro plan. And you are going to change your prices. Don't think for a second you're not. Because you're going to test one thing and you realize, oh, I've been making more money with this thing, or oh, I need to change the way this thing is done, or whatever. You're going to end up doing that. So you got to plan on the build of these different editions in a flexible way. Going back to what I was saying, let's say you started at $30 a month for a basic plan. Now you want to drop it at $10 a month, but you don't want to get rid of all the people that are already paying you $30 a month. So what you do is you remove some of those features and then drop the price, so you keep the $30 per month people at a certain level, and you have a new basic plan. So you have to be flexible with your pricing, and it's something you need to consider building a flexible system. And that's going to run you anywhere from 20 hours into, once again, the hundreds of hours, depending upon how complex those systems get. Okay, now what the thing actually does. So because we have a very broad conversation going on here, it can be so much. So what we generally say is a tool, not a platform, but a tool will start around $15,000, $15K, and they can go up to $100K or so. A platform, that much more fully featured system, usually starts around $50K and can go up to $250K. It can actually go a lot higher, which I'm going to talk about in just a minute. All right, but then you launch. Let's say you go ahead and you launch. Don't forget about your marketing costs. You've got things like your marketing automation, your drip emails, user testing systems, analytics systems, customer relationship marketing systems. Don't forget, you've got to worry about those costs as well. Okay, so what didn't we talk about? That mobile development, app development. A lot of times, SaaS systems now can be built on a platform that enables it to be mobile responsive. And that means that it'll work pretty well on most mobile devices, depending upon what it is. The thing to know about this is that you still have to go back in and make changes to make that mobile system work. You just need to make sure that whoever you're working with on this, they either build it in or you know they're not building it in to the initial cost. And if you build an app, it's going to cost, I don't know, anywhere from half the cost to twice the cost of building the thing. It really depends on mobile, it depends on Android, iOS, etc. The thing to remember is you're going to make changes in your SaaS system, and when you do that, your users are going to expect those changes to be made in both your apps, iOS and Android. So take that into consideration. You're going to have a lot of changes moving forward on the system. Start off with just the web-based SaaS is my recommendation. All right. So next, let's talk about costs. So we've got for individuals, if you're just hiring one guy, like a freelance developer to do this, then, which by the way is probably not a good idea, but I'll get into why that's not a good idea in just a moment. So for individuals, in India, you can get somebody that is okay for around $12 an hour. Sometimes. I'll get into that in a second. I actually really don't recommend by any means working with just freelancers in India. I've seen too many projects go bad. There are companies in India that are good, but don't work with a freelancer. In the Philippines, in Indonesia, you can go as low as about $15 an hour, 15, 20, 25. Eastern Europe, they're going to run you anywhere between $20 an hour and $65 an hour. Sometimes a little higher, especially if you have like AI specialists or PhDs or something like that. Western Europe, they're going to run you anywhere between $35 an hour and $85 an hour. Sometimes higher as well, but that's a good general range. In South America, we've worked with guys out of Argentina and Ecuador, and those guys have run us anywhere between $30 an hour and $65 an hour. And then finally, in the US, you've got anywhere between $50 an hour and as high as $250 an hour. I've seen some really, really highly priced US guys. So, briefly, let's talk about why these guys, not why these guys cost different, but the advantages of different areas of the world. My experience is that the guys in the US have the best feel for information architecture and UX design. The UX design and architecture are terrible in Indonesia and India. The guys in South America generally have a pretty good grasp on design, graphic design, but not nearly the same as the US people do on UX and the user experience, which is critical to the SaaS systems. And then the Eastern Europeans, they're pretty good all around, but once again, they're not as good when it comes to the UX design, and also not as good when it comes to project management, in my opinion. All right, so that's cost. Oh, one other thing. Cost for individuals versus cost for agencies. So when you're hiring an agency, it's higher because the cost is higher because they have to pay for managing all these people, making sure everything is done, making sure you're happy, they have risks they incur, they have office space, sometimes all sorts of things. This is what you're paying for. You're paying for security. You're paying for, if that developer leaves, it's that agency's problem, not your problem. So just know what you're paying for. If you want to go low budget, maybe you can do it with a freelancer or a team you put together. If you want to make sure your investment is secure, go with an agency on it. Okay, example projects. So, the lowest cost system, I think I said this before, that we've ever done runs about $15,000. And so, by the way, we are an Atlanta-based custom software development team. We also work with companies in the region and across the US, and we have clients as far away as Singapore. At this point, people are seeking us out to do some of their SaaS development. All right, some example projects. We built an advanced form building surveying system for a very specific niche market. And that system ran over the course of 3 years. We did an MVP, we did some testing, We did 2 additional phases on the project, and altogether that ran about $85,000. That had all sorts of, actually everything I just talked about in this video. It had user management, additions, pricing, admin panel, all of that stuff, and it has some really cool features in it as far as form building tools were concerned. The next one was a directory service with advanced searching and an advanced admin area. What this client was doing was they had a team that was manually mining data from all over the internet, and they were posting it up onto a centralized area, centralized database, and then selling access to that information. So that system, it also, by the way, had really cool back-end systems for entering data really fast. We made sure that the people on the back end never had to take their hands off the keyboard when they're entering stuff. So there's no mouse movements, just enter. It's just people working all day long just entering data. So we had to have some pretty cool stuff on the back end to make sure that was super smooth. And that ran right at about $30,000. Let's see. We did a healthcare practice management system, and that also was a multi-year project, and the total cost of that was about $500,000. And that was a system that ran an entire healthcare system. So that was a pretty beefy project. That system, it interfaced directly with machines in hospitals and billing systems and insurance systems and all sorts of stuff. So that was pretty beefy. It was not, though, a true SaaS system. When it comes down to it, that system didn't have a way for a user to create a new account, purchase an edition, and deploy it on their system. It took a very strong service side to be able to implement that into a new facility. Oh yeah, another great one is Brainleaf. So altogether, Brainleaf is our SaaS system. It's a project planning tool, project scoping tool for designers and developers. We probably put about $250,000 into that system over the course of multiple years now. To do the initial build, maybe $35,000 to $45,000. All right, so that's it. That's where we are. We've got just a quick review. We covered aspects of SaaS, contributing factors to cost. That was that tool versus platform stuff. What most people don't think about is things like the admin panel and user management, things like that. The cost of developers in different parts of the world, and example projects and their costs. I hope this was helpful for you. I hope you learned a ton. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. And as always, we are available for work. Have a great day.